What if English is your second language and you write a short story and it actually wins a contest? That's what happened for our wonderful, talented guest today on Writer Talks. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and I have the honor and pleasure of interviewing the winners of our monthly short story contest here at Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. I am so honored to introduce to you winning short story writer Federica Santini. Welcome, Federica.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So you're coming to us live from Atlanta, but your homeland is Italy, and your first language is Italian. And your beautiful story, One of Us, that won the December short story contest, is in English. And it was your first short story in English, and it won. And it will be published in our fourth international anthology of short stories. So, can you talk about how this came to be?
Yes, and thank you. Thanks again for having me. I was honored to win, honored to be invited to talk to you tonight. Well, there are many translingual writers in this world, and most of us say the same thing, actually, that you feel more freedom when you write in a second language.
Oh.
And it's a way to just crash all those barriers and all those fears of not being good enough, because there is that bit of a safety net of, well, after all, I'm trying my best, but it's not my language. So be patient with me, and with that, you are completely free. Each writer, I think, has to battle with the fear to fail, to not be good enough, and that's for everyone. Translingual writers or writer who write in their own language or languages, we just have to try to do away with it and know that we're putting ourselves out there, and that's the most important thing. And
Oh,
so that's how I wrote that story. I took from lore and traditions and images that I had from my own, not just country, but from my own home region of Tuscany,
ooh,
and then went from there. And
uh-huh.
writing it in English allowed me not to stall too much and be too scared about, oh, is this not good enough? Is this not significant enough? And I just wrote it, and that's mostly the way I write creatively.
Wow, that's fascinating. Oh my goodness, because it's beautifully written for even someone who is a native English speaker and writer.
Yeah.
So, congratulations on that. One of Us. It will be in the anthology coming later this year. So, congratulations on that. So, Federica, you also teach Italian and interdisciplinary studies at Kennesaw University in near Atlanta, Georgia. Can you talk about the writing that you do in your work?
In my work, I hold an MA in Comparative Literature from the University of Siena, Italy, and a PhD in Italian Literature from UCLA. So my training is in experimental writing, and mostly trauma and poetry and Italian and European poetry of the 1960s. So my academic writing is, I would say, quite abstract, and it focuses on those writers who try to break barriers in many different ways. My other specialty is gender and women studies, so I teach and research in that field. Normally, in a regular academic year, I'll teach some classes in Italian literature or culture, and I'll teach some classes in currently, I teach gender in the workplace, global perspectives of gender, love and sex, that kind of thing. And these are all things that converge in my creative writing, which I would say is different, very different from my academic side of
Mm-hmm.
the
I love
medal.
it.
But it comes from there. It comes from there. There's always that attention to women, to gender, to empowerment of women, to also the fluidity of genders. And I think also in my writing, there's always that idea of breaking some barriers as best as I can, and that comes from my academic training.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, how does your academic writing differ from your creative writing?
Well, I talked a little bit about what I write academically. Now my creative writing is completely different. Normally, I mostly write poetry, and I like to say that I write about secrets, and these secrets are the small things that we may not notice under the surface of every day. So not necessarily my work is always in fantasy or has to do with magic. Oftentimes it's not, but it's always trying to capture those little secret things that may go unnoticed, and that are part of the everyday, but at the same time they're hidden, and to uncover the little shiny things or the dark, secretive moments that hide in the corners, just out of our visions. And that's
Uh-huh.
true for my poetry and for my fiction.
Wow, that's fascinating. Oh my goodness. So, having such a demanding academic schedule, how do you find the time to do your creative writing?
Well, the most simple answer may be it's really what I love to do. I live to write,
Uh-huh.
be it scholarly writing or fiction writing or poetry. It's really, I cannot live, and I don't remember a moment in my life where I could go on without writing. It's just simply what I do, and I think for people watching this show, many of us are in the same situation. How do we not write?
Right,
Maybe
exactly.
the problem. That said, it's true for me and it's true for everyone that we have so many commitments. We have day jobs, meetings, schedules to meet, deadlines, etc. And sometimes it's hard to find that focus. And I think I learned how to do that when I was first writing my dissertation, and when you write that way, you know that you have months and months ahead of you where you can just focus on your project, which is fantastic. It's amazing, but for most of us, it's not gonna happen again, or perhaps very, very rarely if we have a fellowship, a short retreat or something. So for most of us, we have to squeeze it in somehow. And what I like to do is just to do it, to find the time, and be it 2 minutes or 5 minutes. And sometimes it can be just some notes that I jot down on my phone in between a meeting or the other. Or sometimes in a class, a student says something and I have an idea, and I actually, stop to write down that little note, and then I credit them, of course, if
Uh-huh.
it's something that comes from class. But just to capture those tiny bit um, of bitty moments that we may have, and not to focus on I would write if I had time, but to focus on what we have, even if it's little, and just do it. The perfect day for writing is probably never gonna come, or perhaps very rarely.
Wow.
So we have to work with what we have and do the best of it.
I love that. I love that. And you're succeeding because your first book of poetry is going to be published in September.
Mhm.
Can you talk about it?
Yes, it's my first chapbook. It came out of poems that were published in several journals and magazines here in the US and internationally in 2020 and 2021. And I was happy to then had the manuscript accepted by Kelsey Books. So the chapbook is called Unearthed, and it's again dark and secretive, and about mysterious things. It's poetry, but there is some prose work in it. There are fragments. Certainly, it's not formal poetry, nor is it confessional poetry, although I'm a great lover of Plath and Sexton and all of them. But what I do is kind of different. There is no lyrical I that much. There is mostly a you and things that you may not have seen or perceived.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. That's fascinating. So, how do you feel when you're writing? Does like the whole world just kind of fade away and you just immerse in that moment of you and the words and the pen and the paper or the computer screen, whatever? What does that feel like for you?
In an ideal day, yes, everything fades away and I'm just writing and completely immersed in that. And sometimes I get there and I'm very, very happy when I do, and then I kind of forget about everything else and do it. Other times it's just a reverberation or a note or alpha sentence that comes to me in the middle of daily occurrences. And normally I just always have the notes up on my phone open and I write like that in big. So
Oh,
for instance, for the story One of Us, I thought of that image there, one character that appears very, very briefly at the very beginning and has a minor role, but she kind of came to me perhaps from the past or perhaps from stories that I heard in my childhood. And as I saw her in my head, I had the entire scene and I just wrote it. And then there is a long process, of course, of revising and rethinking and doubting and changing and correcting. But yes, I would say I write from images that come from fragments from somewhere.
wow. Fascinating. Fascinating. And so you also teach writing workshops, correct?
No, I've done one writing workshop. I do hold workshops for young academics about balancing scholarship
Oh,
and
okay.
the other parts, the big parts of our, the other big parts of our job, which is teaching and professional service. And it's a similar situation to that of creative writers. So much of an academic's life is teaching, and we are all in because we love it, but we also have the research part, which requires calm and a lot of focus and often doesn't go with the day in, day out happening. So being in the classroom and paying full attention to students.
Oh,
So that's what I teach, how to carve out that time to write, how to try to get in the zone that you just mentioned of being immersed and
yes.
completely into that.
Yes, yes. Beautiful, beautiful. Oh my gosh. So how does your focus on gender and women's studies influence your writing?
It influences my reading a lot. I read a lot of women writers, national and international. I was raised in um, in a society where the the big writers were primarily male, and what the courses and the many courses in literature I took in school and to some extent in college were very often about male writers. And so I started to focus on the opposite as an academic and trying to collaborate with many other scholars of Italian, women scholars of Italian studies in breaking the canon and making Italian women writers emerge in all of their power and potential. Um, as a writer that comes through I think in most of my characters that I write, I pay a lot of attention, not just to women characters, but also to characters who may be fluid in gender or non-binary, etc. I haven't been very successful as yet at writing a male character, but maybe that's gonna come to me as well.
Uh-huh.
In fact, the story that you have, one of us is one
Yes.
of us sisters and has only women characters.
I love that. That's so powerful. And you're raising awareness by doing what you're doing as a professional, as a as a professor. Sorry. I remember when I was at the University of Michigan and I was an English major and I was taking so many literature courses, and the male dominance or prevalence in the classes and on the uh, list, the syllabus. It made me so angry. And then I took women's studies courses and I learned about all these amazing writers who are women. And, the whole starting to be called scribblers in I think it was the 1700s instead of writers, and then publishing under male pseudonyms or initials like George Eliot, or it was enraging. So do you ever get mad?
Yes, always. Every minute of every day. No, more seriously, I think things have changed. Even since I was an undergrad in college to now, they have changed a lot. They keep changing. And we see so much more diversity by gender, ethnicity, religion, etc., represented in syllabi, as you mentioned. So that there is something to be happy about. Certain other things I think will take a little bit more time, but I think that will get there.
Well, it's awesome that you are a leader in making that happen. So I commend you and applaud you for doing that. It's
Thank you
awesome.
so much, and congratulations on what you do. When I saw the name of your business, of your agency, Two Sisters, I knew that was
Oh, thank
where I wanted to
you.
go.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much. So, we've published our mother's memoir, our own novels and nonfiction books, as well as books by many women and men, but all of them have an against the odds success story element and some kind of issue of diversity included. So, we're very committed to the themes that you're doing. And it's really wonderful because all of us make a big difference one by one.
Definitely, you are making that difference.
Thank you so much. So, Federica, a major theme among our writers is having a day job and wanting to be creative. And we've talked a little bit about that tonight, but are there any tips you can offer to those who are juggling a career, family, other obligations, and the dream of being a writer?
Yes, I'd say break it down in little bits. I think it's very easy and sad how many of us think I have to write the perfect book. And if I don't find the perfect space and time to do that, then it's that or nothing. And
Yes.
I think that's not a feasible way to do it. So I would say break it down in time wise, find little slots of times in which you can write, but also in projects. Nowadays, things have changed. They're much more fluid. There are so many publishers who are looking for micro fictions or very short stories, such as the ones that you welcome, or just fragments. The genres are not as established as they used to be, so you can be very fluid, and that allows us, I think, to have some accomplishments. And I think as an emerging writer, the main thing is to try and see if you can actually finish something, even something very short. There are publishers who are looking for 250 words, 100 word stories. So try some of those. And with that, the building a habit, a deliberate habit of sitting down and writing will come, and with the habit then will come the longer works and the big novel and the success. But we all have to start somewhere, and as in our world, we are all always looking for time. I think
Right.
starting very small is a good way to go and to have that sense of having finished something, having submitted something. And the other thing is don't doubt yourself so much. Find space to reaffirm who you are, what you're doing, and why. And once you have those affirmations, just yes, edit, correct, be careful, but then send it out, because
Oh.
the perfect piece
Mm-hmm.
was perhaps never written or submitted, but there are many excellent pieces out there. And if those writers said that thought, oh, I'm just not good enough. One thing I like to do is to reread the affirmations by Octavia Butler. She's
Uh-huh.
one of my great favorites,
Uh-huh.
and they're widely available online. And you can find them. They're simple, but they're really into. I will write, and I will succeed. I will do this, and
Oh, okay.
that's very inspiring.
Wow. Do you post them up or do you say them to yourself or do you write them down or?
By now, I could almost re-say, but I have them on my computer and on my phone.
Uh-huh.
I reread them. One
Oh.
thing I do, if you are one of those writers who are inspired by other writers, is I have just simple widgets on my phone of writers I love. So I have Plath and Sexton and Butler, Gwendolyn Brooks, Lorraine Niedecker, who's a great American modernist. More recently, I discovered Jane Cortez, the poet, who's amazing. And I don't have their work, but I have just their photos as widgets, and so I can just scroll through them and see their smiles or their intense
Oh my
looks
goodness.
and be inspired. And I like to switch. These days are the days of Gwendolyn Brooks, because I have these photos saved where she's smiling and looking very positive, and I just like to wake up in the morning and just see that, and that's what
Wow.
inspires me to continue.
Oh my gosh. So in I meditate and in my meditations I often get messages from women writers who aren't here anymore, and their message is for me to write with the freedom and the power that we have as modern women in 2021 that they never even dreamed. I mean, they would
Wonderful.
literally get killed for doing certain things or believing certain things. So the message is like that we have the power to represent them and manifest dreams and impact that they were never able to do. So we are carrying that with us.
That's so powerful, Elizabeth. Very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, I have chills, but you're doing it. You're doing it. You know what I mean? You're so keeping their spirits alive and their influence is fueling you to write, produce, create, share. And that's just so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Wow, wow, wow. Because when you think back on what they couldn't do, it's mind blowing compared to the freedoms that we have today, you know?
Yes, I started my training many years ago in literature by studying the early modern. So, for instance, the great painter Artemisia Gentileschi, and the 1600s and all that was all that women were barred from doing at that time. And so what you're saying is bringing me back to
Oh,
that exactly.
beautiful. I find that whole idea very motivating. Not that I procrastinate, but we just like you said, we have very busy lives. And so I feel it's like our moral obligation as women who are conscious of all that we just discussed to do the writing and leave that impact.
Yes, that is so true.
Because writing lasts forever, books last forever. So, where can people get your poetry book?
It will be out from Kelsey Books, and it will be available on Amazon and other major websites.
Oh,
It's due
great.
out in September. My
Oh,
other work is available, and that's mostly literary criticism.
hmm. Is there one place online where people can go to read more of your work?
Uh, Not the one place. I have some links on academia under my own name, Federica Santini Academia. I do not have as yet my own
Okay.
website. It's in the works.
Oh, good, 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 good. Because your talent needs to be shared as
Thank
widely
you.
as possible. So, Federica, are there any final words you'd like to share with all the writers out there?
Just keep doing it and remember why you started, why you love it, and when you are discouraged, remember that there's fulfillment also in that discouragement, and that coming true will make it all the more beautiful when it
Oh.
happens.
That is beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you, Federica Santini, for joining me here on Writer Talks. You are amazing. I'm so excited to read more of your works because your short story, One of Us, that won our contest, is just fabulous. So, congratulations, and you will be published in our anthology of international writers. We're so proud to present you, and please keep in touch.
Thank you so much again, Elizabeth, for having me and for the honor of having the story published and included in the anthology.
It's our honor and pleasure, Federica. Thank you. And thank you, all of you, for joining us here on Writer Talks, where you got to meet the writer Federica Santini, coming to us live from Atlanta and talking about how her very first story, written in her second language, English, as opposed to Italian, her native language, won our short story contest. So please check it out, One of Us. It will be on the twosisterswriting.com website under Winning Stories. And you can also read it in the upcoming anthology that will be published later this year. And if you're a writer, please do submit your stories to our monthly contest. So go to twosisterswriting.com and click submissions and check out which contests you'd like to enter. We would love, love, love to see your work and showcase you here on Writer Talks and in our anthologies. So please give us a thumbs up because this was an amazing interview with Federica. Please also subscribe to the channel, drop a comment or question if you have one that we can answer for you. You can follow me on Twitter at Elizabeth Atkins and at Two Sisters Writing, the number Two Sisters Writing. And remember, happy writing. You have the power to be a positive, powerful influence on the world with your words. Be well.